and CEO of the global mentorship platform, EDPList, and he sets the vision and strategy for the company. Felix has overseen the EDPList to overcome the largest community of mentors in tech across 127 countries. A designer entrepreneur, Felix embedded his creative roots in ADP culture, product, and community. He's been featured on Forbes, Tech in Asia, Straits Times, and CNBC. So thanks, Felix, for joining us. And next up, we have Sara Goepfert. Sara is an interactive designer, design lead based in San Francisco, Bay Area. She specializes in product design, visual design, and e-commerce experiences. She's passionate about solving problems through design, reasoning, and systems thinking. She also loves travel and go on long city walks and daydream about her next adventure. Thanks, Sara, for joining us. And Ben Holland-Arlen from ServiceNow. Ben is a seasoned designer with more than 10 years of experience spanning various startups, agencies, nonprofits, and enterprise companies. He's currently a staff product designer at ServiceNow. He loves solving complex problems. He does not love the phrase, "This is how we do it," because this is how it's always been done. And when he's not working, you can find him nerding out about or playing music, exploring the world on foot or bike, or experimenting in the kitchen. He currently lives in the San Diego area with his wife, son, and dog named Willis. And thanks for joining us, Ben. And finally, Brad Soroka. Brad Soroka is a senior design manager from Adobe Creative Cloud Express. He's spreading the mission of creativity for all the new users and the next generation of creators. He and his team work across Adobe ecosystem to create tools that anyone can use for things like brands, libraries, search, collaboration, onboarding, and education. Previously, Brad was the product creative director at ServiceNow, where he led the vision and teams that created the App Engine Studio, a low-code app building platform. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Brad. And now we'll get started with the panel. So we've introduced you guys, but we'll hit it to it, and I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody's faces. All right. So yeah, how are you doing? How's our fellow panelists doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, feeling great. Tried not to drink too much coffee before this, so I could be pumped up, but feeling good. Ready to be here.
Nice. Yeah, only tea for me. Yeah, thanks for being here. Okay, so yeah, today we're talking about mentorship and how someone gets into it. So to start, I want to open up to everybody, and I guess I already kind of introduced you guys, but if you have maybe an introduction of yourself, a short introduction of you and where you find yourselves in the mentorship journey. Could we start with Brad? Oh, I think we have you muted.
I'm back. Sorry,
Nice.
On my side. Okay, big question. The question of what makes a good mentor and where I am in my mentorship journey. I think, like, broadly speaking, when I think about what makes a good mentor and the mentors that I've had throughout my life, they were unexpected. Like, it wasn't necessarily something that was like assigned or sought after, but it was through working together and like gravitating towards people that I really respect. That's how I connected with them. And I was thinking about this. Maybe a mentor who was great for me isn't a great for everybody. Maybe they are not like, quote, a good mentor, but they were just like the good, like, soulmate, mentor mate, or soul mentor in a way for me. because I connected with them in a different way, and like the things that they taught and spoke about were just resonated with me. It's kind of like when we read books, we can read 100 books on the same topic, and maybe there's that one book, that one author that like really just it just sunk in. And I feel like that's kind of what makes a good mentor, is like really that like that human connection that really resonates with you, that you can be inspired by and like and relate to too, and see yourself, you know, years ahead being that person.
Cool. And I guess with that in mind, like, are you right now? Where do you find yourself in do you find yourself in a mentorship position, also a mentee position for yourself?
I think I'll forever be in both positions. I don't think I'll ever not
Mm-hmm.
be a mentee. You know, like that's
Mm-hmm.
just like the whole growth mindset, and always learning. And I think even more so in the past 6 months, because prior to so I was at ServiceNow for 4 years. Great company, highly recommended. I think I'll always be a potential boomerang. So like anyone who's thinking about ServiceNow, like check it out. It's a great place to be. And I was a leader there, but it was more of the like individual contributor type leader. So the doing and the working with folks side by side to lead like product work together. And so it was more of like kind of like apprenticeship type mentoring, you know, like on the job training. And as a manager at Adobe, it's different because the things that people come to me for are different, kind of different ways of helping folks. And now that I've had management experience in the past, but not at the like large enterprise scale like Adobe or any of the folks in this panel really, it's like that's my growth there now. Is I am now like definitely a mentee trying to figure out how to navigate as a manager at a large company, and with a need to like scale and grow and hire, just different problems to solve.
Cool. Great. I'll pass that over to Ben. Same question.
So what makes a great mentor? I mean, for me, similar to Brad, I didn't really seek them out. It just kind of happened. It's people I worked with, or often I'd be looking for a job and I'd be networking, and I meet someone who'd be not like a long-term mentor, but help me along my path to find that new job. And often I stay in touch, but I think that's something some mentors, like I just built a talk for a class I was taking about impactful presentations. And I did it actually about the power of mentoring, both for what you get as a mentor and as a mentee. But like one of the things I kind of but I focused on is sort of like in the movies, you see these like epic mentoring journeys, like the Karate Kid, or of course, Star Wars. And I think there's sort of this thought that it's like always this huge things that you're like waxing on and waxing off for like months before you're able to like throw your first punch. But in reality, sometimes mentoring is more like micro mentoring. It's maybe a few sessions, which is exactly what I've noticed in ADP. So yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of like where I found my mentors. And like really for me, what makes a good mentor is there's definitely like a commonality. Often they've been where I am in this stage of my career, and so they're able to speak very forthright about it. And really, but there's been other ones who like, you know, looking back, it's not someone I necessarily would have thought I would have connected with. They're very different than me, but that perspective is also what is so valuable. And then remind me, what was the second part of the question?
Oh, where do you find yourself in the mentorship journey?
So I'm sort of in the middle-ish, I guess. I've been mentoring in some way or another since about 2016. Nice. That's exactly the picture I had in my presentation, Adam. But yeah, it's really exploded since I joined ADP List last year. I've been just doing a lot, and I've talked to over 40 people now, and it's been really amazing just seeing the growth. And now after being there, working with people for about 9 months, I'm really starting all of a sudden to see this slew of people, like almost like once a week, someone being like, I just got my first job and like, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without your help. So yeah, I agree with what Brad said, that it's definitely, it's never done as much as you think you know. There's always people who know more, and you seek those people out. So yeah, that's my answer.
Sara, I'll throw the question to you.
Okay, so to start out, I'll just say that I am also in the same realm as Brad and Ben, where I'm still doing both things. I'm finding myself like navigating between both roles. I've definitely taken on the mentor role in an informal and formal capacity. I love to help people wherever I see that I can do so. So especially since I've had people take me under their wing. So it's almost like I feel a duty to go ahead and pay that forward to other people who may need a little bit of help, finding their way. As far as being a mentee, I'm very opportunistic with it. If I sense an opportunity where I can learn from somebody who has expertise in an area of design that I am not, fully fleshed out on, I will happily assume the mentee role. So I definitely embrace both, and there's a lot to be learned in either role.
Cool. And finally, Felix. Do you, what do you think, what's the value of mentorship to you, and where do you find yourself in your mentorship journey?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Antonio. So I think there's a lot of value about mentorship in which, we put in perspective here at ADP List. And personally, one of the most important things about mentorship is, really learning perspectives and reality. We go to schools and we don't really kind of get that experience. And, we often walk into the workforce not knowing what to expect, despite spending probably more than 18 years in school, from high school to college, even back in Singapore, where I come from. So, students are often not workforce ready. And I think that, not just about students to the first job, but also someone being from an IC role now wanting to promote to a manager, or from manager to a VP, honestly, at every single level, you just don't know what to expect. And there's just no books or courses that is written out there for that. And mentorship is that one sure way that you can actually get experience directly from someone, right? From a 30 minutes conversation or from an hour coffee chat, and I think that's what valuable is, that you would never be able to get that perspective and that experience if you never had entered the room for just 30 minutes. And I think that's, what's so powerful here at ADP is that, we constantly strive to get people that 30 minutes. And I think, personally for me, and to the other question, for me, where I'm at right now is, we are hiring people, and we are having more people on the team. And, one of the things is that I'm still learning every day. In fact, just last week, I actually had 2 ADP mentorship calls with, folks from the engineering field, because we are hiring some engineers to join the team. And, I have not been an engineer myself. I've been a designer. And, I just went on there, booked 2 mentors, and really understand what they look out for when hiring for an engineer. And I feel like, the advice that they gave me was extremely unique. It's not something that you find in books. And that's exactly, what we're looking to deliver. And that's exactly, for me, what mentorship is really about learning that perspective that, you might not have gotten elsewhere. And it's just 30 minutes, and that can truly change anyone's life. So I would say that I'm both a mentee and a mentor at the same time, always.
Awesome. Nice. Yeah. And I guess everybody kind of touched on similar topics, like how just the benefit that it can bring you, the perspectives it can bring you, how yourselves are still not only mentoring, but also practicing being a mentee and continuing to learn. And so with all those great features, I think maybe everyone here is like, okay, I'm ready. Maybe I want to become a mentor or mentee, but with that, maybe we have some hurdles and problems. So I guess I want to start by maybe unpacking that a bit and asking to you guys, what do you think are some hurdles that somebody looking for a mentor could encounter? And I'll throw it back to you, Felix.
Yeah, for sure. So like challenges that they might encounter finding a mentor, is that your question? Just to clarify that question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that people might encounter. I think first of all is not knowing exactly how to approach the mentorship session or that coffee chat itself. And I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, that I often tell mentees and people that I've met is that, you know, we kind of take the word mentorship a little bit too seriously last time. It used to be that way. And what I mean is not seriously as in, you know, the way that you approach those sessions, you know, it's in a way super structured, and it's too much of formality. And I think one of the things that we observe that, you know, makes things work really well is, you know, two things, right? First is going into this session being prepared, and I think that's extremely important. That probably is like 80% of the time, you know, you have to be prepared. The second thing is, you know, you have to be prepared, but at the same time, you know, relax yourself, be open, and, you know, just have fun, right? Not go in there and almost like you are going into a lecture hall. You know, it's not a lecture hall. It's a two-way street. It's a conversation. You know, you're just not there to interview or interrogate someone, right? Go in there, have a great conversation, prepare your questions, and have a good discussion. I always like to think that discussion is the way to go. And once you have that, I think, you know, everything else flows extremely smoothly. Yeah. So those are the things that I think would make a mentorship session great, and obviously overcome those challenges.
Cool. Yeah. And I think we before this event, where we were kind of talking about preparing the event, we also talked about accessibility. Is there any hurdles that you guys have heard of or encountered yourself with in terms of being able to access mentorship?
I think there's there's amazing platforms out there, right? Like ADP. And I think that there are, I think one of the biggest hurdles is overcoming the fear, like letting that vulnerability kind of come out. And for people who are more, you know, introverted or shy, they might be hesitant in like actively asking someone to be their mentor, or meeting somebody new that they haven't met before, and like sharing their insecurities. So there's that, like, that space of trust that needs to come with that. And then there are people maybe on the other side that think they don't need one, like think they've got it all figured out. And it's only when like they're completely lost and don't know where to turn, and they feel like they have no one to talk to, that maybe that's the time when mentorship is needed most. And that can really be eye-opening. I heard actually Amy Loki, the head of design at ServiceNow, mentioned this, that like throughout her career, as she's progressed, she's at like the top of the design org, right? And so her mentors often come from outside, all actually come from outside of the company, because like her peers are even, you know, there's only kind of one at each of the big companies. And so I think that like the more we progress in our careers, like sometimes the lonelier it can get in seeking that kind of advice. And that's, I think, even more of an impetus to consider people that are in networks that you didn't expect, or people that aren't in your company, because there you can actually be a little bit more open and vulnerable and share things that you might not want to share, you know, with others. To feel, you don't want to feel like you're gossiping at your company, but you know, you can vent to people who have a different perspective on it.
Just to add to that, I mean, also when you seek outside of your organization for mentoring, you can bring in new ideas, things that your company isn't doing, and you can, you know, potentially be a hero of like, I brought this genius idea, and it's really just something you talk to a mentor about, and you're like, this has worked in my company, you should try it at yours.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like you're a lot of the times, like each company, it's its own little world, and without that exposure, we really don't get sometimes that like outside our box thinking, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to what I had in my bio of the hatred for the phrase, this is how we do it because this is how it's always been done. That statement crushes innovation. And so, but it often, like, whether you realize it's happening at your company or not, it may be happening, and having these outside opinions and bringing in new ideas can refresh and bring more energy into your company, creating better, more innovative products as a result.
Yeah, it's not only like a benefit. I mean, it's a benefit to you, of course, but you're also bringing a lot of value to the company. Like,
Yeah.
it's a way to get ahead there and yeah, bring something new. Well, and now talking about like how to, if we're talking about like the ways that mentorship can get you ahead and in which ways it can, I do want to like talk about a bit about the types of resources that you can obtain from mentorship, and then also where might you find them in your companies or in anywhere you can think of. So I'll throw this one to Sara. So do you know of any, or do you have any recommendations for resources or what types of value you can extract from mentorship?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think we all are in agreement that mentorship is very important throughout your career. Even more so when you're just starting out. It's kind of like if you can get somebody to give you direction or insights based on their learnings through trial and error, it's kind of like a cheat code and really like accelerate your progress and get you ahead, which is fantastic. As far as finding resources, I personally have always come across mentors in like an informal way, organically. So that is one way that I think I highly recommend, is developing relationships with people that you are working with and that you admire. That's a fantastic way to get to know or get to develop additional resources for mentorships down the line. Also, if you're looking for a more formal route, most bigger companies have formal mentor programs, or mentorship programs. So, highly encourage you all to look into that. If your company doesn't offer it, I'd suggest maybe you recommend that they start one, and maybe you can kind of oversee the founding of it. It'd be a great thing to do for your entire design team, because it will strengthen the bonds between all of your designers and elevate everybody. The rising tide lifts all boats. That I think would apply for a mentorship program within your design team. There's, of course, ADP lists. That's a fantastic way to be set up with formal mentors. I wish that was around when I was just starting out in my career. But yeah, it's really just trying to develop relationships. You can join organizations like SDXD, go to the meetups, meet people, put yourself out there, and it may not necessarily be something where you're jumping right into the mentorship discussion. It's getting to know people, and that's actually a really important part of it, is learning people's personalities and the way that they might deliver feedback and what their expertise are. So to find on your own people who you match well with and embrace, or hold those skills or that experience that you're looking for. And then finally, of course, a lot of universities offer mentorship programs where they link up students with alumni. So that's another great option.
Nice. Yeah, and I think there's like many ways to do it for sure. And I feel like when I talk to every one of you, there was like different stories of how you guys found mentors. Sara, you found mentorship through your job and your company, and you were able to get mentorship and become a mentor. Or at least become a mentor. And I think Brad, you mentioned that you it just it was more organic for you? It's like you never directly maybe asked someone for mentorship?
Yeah, as I think back about that, I think I lied. There was actually, I can remember one of my greatest mentors and my current mentor. I actually did reach out. It wasn't like a formal, hey, will you be my mentor? But I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting story. I'll just spend a minute telling it. So yes, in the past, my mentors have been organic. They've been people that I've worked with or met at networking events, people I really respected in the industry and loved what they were doing. But when I joined the ServiceNow, actually, so this was like in 2017, I was on a few teams early on that just didn't feel like the best fit for me, and I wasn't quite connecting with some of the folks on the leadership team, and I just felt like I had more potential, and I just wasn't able to realize it. And I remembered the person, one of the people on the interview panel was a manager who interviewed me, and I wasn't reporting to this manager, but I just really respected the way they thought. And so I went and asked him, it's like, hey, can we just go on a walk and just talk? I need to seek some advice. I'm not really sure like where my path is here. And it's funny how we forget some of those things, because like at the end of my tenure at ServiceNow, I felt like I had like the perfect fit. Everything felt just right, but like it wasn't always that way. It took 6 months to a year to really like find my groove, and maybe even longer than that. And this mentor really listened and pointed me in the right direction. We had one-on-ones and continued to be have one-on-ones until he eventually became my manager, which was fantastic. And believe it or not, we're actually this Friday morning, we still have one-on-ones. Like every 6 weeks, we're still doing one-on-ones. So this person is really amazing, and it goes back to me actually asking that, like, maybe it wasn't that formal, I need you as a mentor, but it was like, I gotta talk to you because I respect you and value your opinion. And yeah, I guess in that sense, I was proactive in asking, but it organically kind of became probably a lifelong relationship, I hope.
Yeah, that's great. I think definitely, like, I don't know, in my experience too, it's I think that's part of, maybe it speaks to not the fear, but like some people maybe you don't think about getting a mentor right away, and it's just like a relationship until you kind of realize like, oh yeah, I could learn a lot from this person, where it just becomes like, hey, they could offer, like maybe they offer it or you kind of bring it up. But it's sometimes that's like some of the best like great mentorship, just because it's like very organic and just like a relationship that's built. But I guess with that point in mind, and taking into account that there's different ways to do it, Felix, do you have any? I want to throw this to you. Were you thinking about how people find mentors, or how did you think about finding mentors when you were building ADP list, and how did you focus on facilitating that process? Like, do people reach out to several people, or does it always work on the first try?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I think we discover a lot about mentorship is really the flexibility, and the relevance is extremely important here. And especially when we look at different ways of doing it. There are many ways where I think schools, companies does it. One bit in which I believe Sara had mentioned was to connect with your manager or people in your company. And one of the things is that we often feel like certain people from different companies, they come back to ADP list just because their manager might not be the best mentor, right? And this is purely depending on the companies that you're at. And I think a lot of us can share the same stories that our mentors might not be directly with our manager. And so those are obviously more like fortunate cases if your mentors are that. The other one in which we see at schools, or boot camps, is that students get tied to one single mentor, and if he or she does not get along well, or that is not relevant to them, they cannot switch out of that particular mentor itself. And this goes back to the point of flexibility. we believe that, by providing the flexibility to actually design for an experience that, you could have a one-off conversation, and if you both feel like it's the right fit, both of you could mutually, continue to be in touch. However, if one person feels like, hey, this is not the right fit, whether the mentor or the mentee, then they could always go to somewhere else, right? So designing an experience that gives people the option to continuously, have conversations, whether in a longer term engagement or whether a one-off sort of like coffee chat, is actually important to give them that choice, not just on the mentee side, but also importantly on the mentor side, if they feel that, their own experience is relevant to the person. So I think, it all boils down to us designing an experience where, people can find relevance at the same time flexibility.
Antonio, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was telling Antonio he was on mute, but I was also on mute.
Great. The best. It negated itself. So, oh yeah, I was gonna actually talk to Ben. So with that in mind, and you talked about like all the, I guess, the finding the right fit. And Ben, you mentioned you mentored more than a couple people, like 40 in the past year. I think, did you have an experience with people maybe continuing or falling off? And did you have any techniques for that or learnings from that? Oh, you're on mute again.
Yes, I'm off mute. So I'd say the majority of people I've only met with once, but what was interesting is some I never heard from again. Some like 2 months later were like, I got a job because of you. Like the advice you gave me in that half an hour made me feel much more confident going into the interview process. And I was able to answer the questions, and I even like came prepared with some solid questions to ask the interviewers. And so I'd say there's that category. There's definitely the people who it wasn't like a bad fit, but I talked to them once and that was good. And then I have now a handful of people that we meet. I have a few people that we have sort of a regular cadence where we meet every 2 weeks or so. And then I have a few people that's sort of more ad hoc, that they talk to me, they do their thing, and then like 2 months later, they'll book another session. Or now it's not always, now, like once I've met with someone once or twice, I'm more flexible that you don't need to necessarily meet through the platform. Like I have some people that most of our communications actually happen just from chatting like on LinkedIn or email. So there's different sort of resources. Like you don't always need a half an hour chat. Sometimes a quick response is all they need. Just like sometimes asking questions, like actually twice this week in different circumstances, I've had mentees who are in a situation where they have a job offer or sort of like different paths and they're not sure. Well, if you listen to them, they actually are sure which way to go, but they're not ready to commit to it. So like, do I take this UX design job, even that I really want to focus on research, but I have this offer now? And so sometimes it's less about having a conversation, is more of like putting a couple questions out and then letting them think about it and, write back their answers. And, but you can tell talking to them either in person or just through email or whatever form of messaging, that they've already made their decision. They just kind of help getting to be comfortable with that decision.
Yeah.
So
no, I feel, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, please go on.
No, no, that's great. I was gonna say, like, that's sort of I don't know, a basic part of having a support system. If you think of even outside mentorship, just a lot of times you need to just air things out, and having that person that maybe has a bit more experience and they just say like, yeah, that's cool. And then you get like, the motivation to be like, yeah, my idea works. Like, maybe I should try it. So for sure, like, and yeah, it can take many forms. Like you said, it could be a call, it could be text, And so adapting, like, also I think to take away as a mentee, if you know what type of communication you can use, or you know that you have several tools at your disposal, that could be great. And you were talking a bit about now, like the mentorship for career paths, like I guess finding a job. But I want to turn it a bit on the other way and turn it to Sara. What I guess my question to you is, what types of advice or what types of questions did you find mentees within your company were most useful, or what type of advice were they seeking that was useful to them?
Well, you know, most of the mentees that have come to me, in my situation, I've had design managers ask me to take new folks on to help them find their footing and you know, learn the ropes. So a lot of times they weren't actually coming to me with specific questions. It was more of me just giving them an overview of, you know, all of the things that would help them succeed in their new role. And I actually have created documentation of something that I can cover, you know, so I cover all my bases, and then I can share it out with mentees after the fact. And then, so just that, you know, that'll set the stage. And then I just am always there as a resource if they have questions and can check in on them. Because there's a lot of things that you encounter in a new job when you just really aren't sure, you know, what exactly the protocol is, for example, or you need a specific question, or you have a specific question about something and you don't know who to connect with, you know, those sorts of things. And then also just in regards to reviewing design work, it's really good to talk to people and learn about their thinking and poke holes in it and push them further and get them really critically thinking. So I think that's kind of my way of helping guide people to getting better at what they do. So as far as like people asking questions, I don't know that I have anything specific in mind, but I would just say, make sure it is specific, whatever it is. I would say, make it specific, not open-ended, super broad, difficult to answer. That would be my advice.
Right. Yeah, it's I think if you plan a question with that, is there's sort of I guess the mentee has done most of the work, right? And maybe you're helping them get that like 10-20% of the way there, or maybe just the last 1%.
Sorry, say that one last part again.
Oh no, that I guess by being specific, how is it? If the advice is, just to elaborate a bit on that point, as a mentor and as for mentees, how does that help? How does being specific ease the process for you?
Yeah, I think it's probably more for the benefit of the mentor, in that they can really drill down and get to what you're trying to get out of them. You know, they can be most helpful to you as a mentee if you're super specific about what you want, versus doing something broad. You might not really get as much out of them or exactly what you're looking for. So, and you know, time is limited for everyone. So if you're really economical in the way that you approach mentorship by asking specific questions, you can get to where you want to go faster.
Just to add to that, one thing that's great that Felix, who it looks like dropped, but ADP List recently made improvements to their homepage, and one of the things they have now is actually an agenda. So mentees are encouraged to type in what they specifically want to cover in that half an hour, broken into like 10-minute chunks, which has been really helpful. And then another thing that I've been doing, so having mentored a handful of people now, primarily who are early career, you start to see reoccurring themes of the kinds of questions. And so I've created like a template now where it's a Miro board where it's broken into like 2-3 sections. There's sort of a resources where I have like just a bunch of links to different topics that people seem to always want to know about, such as like design system versus pattern libraries versus style guides, how to prep for design challenges, and et cetera. And then a part that's actually like, because one of the main things I often am doing is portfolio reviews. And so I started kind of compiling all the specific things that kind of happen often that improving will make your portfolio better. But then I actually take screenshots and put everything in one place, and also the resume and their LinkedIn, so they can start kind of zooming out and see how their experience as a candidate kind of looks from an outside perspective, and how really long some of those portfolios are that take up so much room when most hiring managers are only looking for like a minute or so.
Nice. Oh, I now I want to turn it a bit to the other side. So if we talk a bit about, we've talked a bit about mentorship, sorry, being meant from a mentee perspective a lot. I do want to cover a bit of what the mentorship side is like. And then I think, I guess I want to ask, like, what was your experience like, maybe starting to become a mentor, if it was something that you instinctually was like, yes, I want to do that, or did you did you find some resources before doing so?
Yeah, so I pushed myself to be a mentor. I didn't think I actually was qualified at the time, but I felt that like it was important. So I basically, my first mentoring was a portfolio speed review at this big design meetup in San Francisco. And I somehow convinced the organizer to let me be one of the mentors. But going there at the time, I'd been a UX designer officially for about 2.5, 3 years, and mainly worked at startups and much smaller companies than looking around the room. And like, it was all people at like FANG companies that had like HCI masters, and I felt a bit out of place. But by the end of the 12 sessions, I did talk to 15 minutes doing portfolio reviews, and it really made me realize that I actually did know a lot more than I felt I knew. And it kind of helped. I think a lot of designers I've talked to at some point in their career, sometimes their whole career, battle with some sort of imposter syndrome. And doing this sort of mentoring really kind of helps you break free and be like, oh shit, oh, am I not supposed to swear? But makes you realize that you might know more than you think you know. And it's like a very great feeling, because I mean, obviously, the biggest thing is you get to help people, and it's awesome. But what people don't realize is that you also get to help yourself in the process. And so since then, I've, made mentoring part of my sort of regimen and try to do it often. And things like ADP lists make it so much easier to do it. Like I think Sara said, I wish I'd had this at the beginning of my career.
Playing off that idea of like not qualified to be a mentor and imposter syndrome. Yeah, like I feel like as designers, like we're even more prone to that, because like just at our core, we're creating, putting ourselves out there. A lot of it comes from like passion and being vulnerable. But when it comes to being a mentor, thinking you're not qualified enough, I feel like a lot of times that's happened to me, and someone will seek my advice and we'll talk. And afterwards, they'll say like, oh my gosh, that was like so great. Thank you so much. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I don't think I did much other than listen and maybe like throw a comment or two or reference some similar thing that I went through. But that's the stuff. Like it's almost like what makes a good counselor, like a therapist, or it's just listening. And a lot of times, that someone said earlier, a lot of times it's like, I think Ben, you were saying this, where you're often just that sounding board for people to like work out the decision that they've already made, or just kind of arrive at that conclusion. And just having that space where you can just like ramble to somebody that isn't your, the partner that you live with that hears you ramble all day, every day anyways. My wife was a really good encourager of me, like seeking, outside perspectives, because sometimes there'd be things that were bothering me, whether it was work or personal related. And she'd just be like, yeah, we've talked about this a lot. Like we've stood around and talked in the kitchen drinking wine about this for hours. Like maybe it's time to bounce this idea off somebody else. So I think a big part of it really is just being open to listening, and anybody can do that. There's no qualification. We all have ears and we're all empathetic, and we can listen. I think that's where it starts.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. And I guess I want to throw that to Sara. Sara, has being a mentor what has being a mentor influenced you, or how has it been a part of your career?
Well, like Ben said, being a mentor wasn't something that I actively sought out. It just kind of came to me. And when it did, I thought, like, who am I to mentor someone? I think some people in the comments were talking about imposter syndrome there. I think a lot of us are familiar with that feeling. There's just so much to know. Design is so broad and you can't possibly know everything. So I think there's, on my end, there was some hesitation to take on a mentor role initially. But once I got into it, it really was so rewarding to get to know people and be a point of contact for them as they find their way. It's seeing people grow and make progress is just really rewarding. And then also, when you're listening to a mentee and they're bringing new ideas to you, or different perspectives, different ways of looking at things, it really helps you also see things in a new light and see it with fresh eyes, which is super valuable. So that's how it's benefited me over the years.
Awesome. Nice. And now that we're getting into the weeds with mentorship or being a mentor, Brad, when I think in your background, you mentioned that you were doing some more mentorship at different levels. And I wanted to ask you if what were some differences that you found depending on the level that you're mentoring at?
Yeah. So I think early on in my career, I mentioned this in the chat too, when I went from college world to real world, what a slap in the face, had no idea that, even just the basics of working from 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. without roaming around campus, staying up late, it's just everything just kind of shocks your system. So that really threw me off. And there was a small design club in the area where I was living at the time that kind of bridged the gap, but it was a young professionals organization for design. It was an advertising design, and it bridged the gap between people just joining the real world and people in school. And after that shock, I was like, this thing exists. Well, if it'll help me, just for starters, but it's really going to help the people, some of whom are still in school that are friends of mine. It's going to help them kind of make that transition. And so I was all in helping. So it's funny, even at that time, I'm like, am I qualified? I just graduated. Now I'm going back to college campuses, pretending I know what I'm talking about as this professional. But it was good because it was just able to speak to them about what to expect in job interviews and things like that. So that was that kind of mentorship was very fresh and kind of very junior to junior type. And then there is that kind of on the job type training mentorships where you're working with folks and you're kind of training them as you go and learning from them as well. Through networking events, there are those kind of peer-to-peer type mentorship, where you're kind of exchanging similar war stories and growing from each other in that way, working out similar problems. And now that I'm in like much more of a manager role, there is like my peers who are managers that I can talk to. There are managers in similar situations that I previously worked with that I keep in touch with. But I am exploring like what that next level is, and maybe it'll be ADP that gets me there. It's like, how do I get to that next level? And I'm starting to seek folks that are not in my team, but within the larger group at Adobe, and then as well as outside. Because you know, there's that whole phrase of like, what got you here won't get you there. It's that kind of, you know, what am I not seeing? Who could open my eyes to that next level of like leadership that I'm striving for, that you know, that my craft necessarily won't get me to. So that making that transition for me has been a big one, because I still love the craft of design, and I never want to let go of that. So I think it's a balance between, it's not like you're letting go, by the way. I think everybody should like, if you're not a manager, if you're earlier in your career, like know that as you advance into more senior level roles, whether it be individual contributor or manager track, like you're adding to your skill set of like people leadership and things like that. But it doesn't mean that like all the years of, you know, doing that craft are going to like dry up overnight. Like you can still, you know, you can still exercise that craft. It's just building. You don't have to, you know, weaken one area in order to grow in another. Like you've built a solid foundation, and now you can continue to grow. And I know that I think there's some people on this call that are in similar positions within the last like year or 2 or 3 where that transition has happened for them.
Nice, yeah.
Question, there's like, depending on what phase you are in your career, there's different ways that you can bring others along with you. And I think that that's a key as well, is how can you, like, as you benefit from the help of others, remember that others are benefiting from you, and you can all rise together.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And well, with that, we're pretty much at time, and we can start the Q&A. But before that, and I think with your theme, it's a great jumping off point of maybe mentorship. In mentorship, we can all rise together. I want to ask to all the panelists if you have one final piece of advice, or you know, the signature SDXD twittable moment that I just made up for for the end of before we transition to Q&A. So we can start with Ben.
Well, before I give my advice, I just want to have like one add on to what Brad said, which is
For sure
something I don't think anyone's mentioned yet, but mentorship and mentoring is also a great way to find talent. And like, I didn't realize that when I got into it, but you know, talking to people, there's definitely people who aren't yet, you know, ready, because at ServiceNow we tend historically to hire more senior level people, but there's definitely people that I was keeping in touch with and want to get in the door eventually. And one actually of my mentees did actually get one of the 12 interns spots at ServiceNow, so that's pretty awesome. So kind of like an added bonus on top of everything else of why mentoring is awesome. As far as my piece of advice, I would say, you know more than you think, and you know less than you think. So go out there and be a mentor and be a mentee.
I'll pass it over to Sara.
All right, I was going to recommend that you put yourself out there and you put into it as much as you can. You'll get out of it as much as you put in.
Get those specific questions, guys. Very specific question to your mentors.
That's right.
And Brad, if you have any final thoughts, although I think like the rising tide raises all mentors, or that's how the saying goes, right? But if you have an even more poetic thing or the same thing, feel free.
Wow, hard to follow. Ben and Sarah, those are really great points. I think it's just I feel like this just goes for every aspect of life, whether it's design or personal things you're trying to work through. In any way, like you don't have to figure it all out yourself. Like don't be afraid to ask for help. I'm saying that and I fall into that trap all the time where I think I can do it. I'm supposed to be able to do this. And it's I don't know if I it's just like my default. And I think if you really remember that it's okay to ask for help and that like this is how the world works. Look at everybody on this call, like every bit of human experience is human because of the way that we work together. So just remember that. Like it sounds cheesy, but you're not alone and you can ask for help.
Yeah. I feel I've definitely told myself I'm supposed to be able to do this, and that's usually like it's not that I'm supposed to be able to do this. It's like you can ask for help. Yeah, you're not alone. That usually just makes things so much easier. It's like, oh, I thought this was really difficult, but I just needed, someone to ground me a bit or bring some other perspective that I don't have.
Just to add to that, I think that's also the value of being able these platforms like ADP List, where you can find external mentors, because sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk to an internal mentor and say, ask them something that you feel you should know.
Mm-hmm.
And so talking to someone outside can kind of just make it a bit more comfortable to get up to speed on that thing.
Cool. Okay. Something you think you should know as the mentee.
As the mentor.
As a mentor. Oh.
Well, no, sorry. As a mentee, like, you might be like, not feel comfortable telling your manager that like your Figma skills aren't as good as you somehow made them look in your interview. Mm-hmm. And like, but you can ask an external mentor, like, where can I go to like get better at Figma? Just as an example.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay. So now we can transition into the Q&A section of the talk. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to add them in the chat. And well, after our tweetable moments, now we can start that. So our first question comes from ex-president Tara Jensen from SDXD, but now ServiceNow. And she asked if there are times where you don't know what kind of help you need. And sorry, I'm going to read that again. I feel like there are times where you don't know what kind of help you need and don't know what specifics to bring. Would be curious if any of the panelists have dealt with ambiguity while mentoring.
Yeah, that Tara, that comment really resonated with me. And I feel like that's what when you transition from one job to the other, that's like what I've been dealing with. I've been my life for the past like 4 to 6 months. And I think that's for me personally, and this may apply to a lot of people, like ambiguity and uncertainty. Like there's something about it that I thrive in when it comes to solving design problems. But then there's also something about it that makes me like panic and lose sleep at night because I just don't know what the future is going to bring. I think it's those bigger things, the ambiguous things outside of like solving particular design problems, but like bigger, maybe organizational problems or just, career path, life change problems. Wow. I think that's when if you don't have the agenda item, that could be the one agenda item. Like that's the thing, like how to navigate ambiguity. It's okay to have that as the talking point and, spend a half an hour just working that out. Like, what does that mean? What is uncertain? And through a conversation with your mentor, you could really maybe uncover like that maybe there's a lot less ambiguity than you realize. Maybe there are a few things that are within your control that you can actually like do something about, and other things just, if it's just going to take time to work itself out, then that's usually what it takes. So I think ambiguity is probably, at least for me, one of my biggest like pains and fears and things that I need to work through.
Just to play off that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, in a similar note to what Brad was talking about, I think a lot of being a designer is being vulnerable. And so when you have a conversation, maybe you go in talking to your mentor and you just aren't able because you don't have the full picture to be able to speak clearly about this thing. But being able to just go in and be more vulnerable and say, hey, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but like, I want to, you know, let's go super broad. Like, I want to be a UX designer, but I don't know where to start. And like, there's something to that, because often your career, like, things are super ambiguous, like you don't know the answers, and you have to be a bit vulnerable to kind of just get past that to be able to actually start making something.
Mm. Yeah, it's sort of the same thought of also like having what we touched on earlier about thinking you can do this on your own, and that's sort of the opposite of vulnerability. When a lot of the job is actually like a very human, like, again, human-centered, haha, but job where you actually have to take that into account. And if you're not allowing yourself to do that, then it's gonna be a bit tough. Yeah. Sarah, did you have anything, were you gonna touch on something on the question?
Yeah, I was just going to elaborate on the whole ambiguity thing. I feel like it's just so common to have ambiguity in this field for some reason. And, you know, we all experience it. And I think if you're, you know, talking to a mentor about it, just want to say that I totally agree with what Brad was saying, and just putting that out there, because it's totally understandable. We all deal with it. And I think that your mentor can help you find ways to make things less ambiguous, different ways of framing the way that you think about things, or additional resources where you can find additional clarity. So I think that that can be super valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of frameworks, right? I feel like to think through ideas, or that's definitely a lot of the value I've had from mentorship, is just talking through something and kind of giving it shape. And UX has a lot of tools for that too. Awesome. We have a question from Laura, and she says, yeah, what if you are looking for a mentor as a person who does not have a UX job and is trying to get into UX?
I think going to things like this is going to things like this is a great start. Getting to know people in the field.
I think some of people are a lot more open than we realize to helping others. And I think that's right, what Sarah said, like definitely seeking any types of opportunities like this. And, you know, like just asking, I know we're all busy, but like, I'm more inclined to give my time to folks that I don't know, who just want to have a short conversation, like they hit me up on LinkedIn or something like that. Like, I love when they're like, hey, I'm not looking, you know, for a job. Like maybe they are, but they're not like trying to get anything from me. They just want to ask a few questions, just out of curiosity. I think that's always a great start, just to start reaching out. Sure enough, you will find somebody willing to help and talk.
Cool.
I would also suggest that if you do reach out to somebody and looking for advice on how to start, that if you want to continue that relationship and have regular check-ins, it'll be really helpful and encouraging for your mentor to see that you are taking steps to go down that path. So if they're giving you advice on how to get into that career, like, are you taking those steps to actually pursue that goal? And that'll really help strengthen the relationship between you and your mentor, and give them further incentive to help you on your journey.
Yeah, Aisel did say that in chat. So building a relationship with the ulterior motive, which I think is a big component of just like, it's sort of a networking without networking. It in that you're there for like the relationship and for to share a moment and to learn from each other, and not necessarily to get like, if you probably start like asking for a job or something, that's maybe not the way to go. But if you're learning there and just looking to share some time and learning something and getting the right direction, because at the end, like you said, Sarah, I think it's like what you put into it. That's sort of a good way to go about it and foster that relationship. Anybody else have questions in the chat? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, echoing what Sara says, the follow through on the mentee side is huge. Like, if I mean, we're basically donating our time because we care about this, but like, if we're not getting, you know, people aren't following through and doing what they said they'd do, it doesn't strengthen the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Sorry, I was like looking through our questions in our spreadsheet. Since we're not too many, you could also feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question that way. Have direct access to 3 expert mentors.
I have a question. Okay.
Oh, hey.
As a mentor in a mentor-mentee relationship, what's your, I guess, top learning that you got while mentoring someone else that maybe was unexpected? It's probably a tough one. Sorry, guys.
Thinking face.
Yeah, I guess one of them is that you learn more about what you don't know, and you learn more about yourself. Like what you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to help. It sounds like, oh, I'm donating my time to help somebody else. And yeah, like that's what the start of it is. But, you know, all of the folks, Sarah and Ben have said, like what you get out of it is unexpected too. And you can learn a lot of things. You know, like sometimes when you're giving, this happens like movies or something where like someone's giving someone advice and then like they realize like, oh snap, maybe I should like turn that advice right back on me. Because, you know, like it's interesting how much of our own advice we don't listen to. So I feel like those are the kind of unexpected things that I've gotten out of conversations with mentees. I've also it's also a constant reminder, especially for people who are just starting on in their career, like just because they don't know that much about like the industry, like doesn't mean that they don't know that much. Like there's so many smart people in this world of all ages, and like it continues to blow me away, like how wise like the young folks, how wise the generation, that all generations are. Like the questions that I'm asked and the things that I haven't thought about in a while. Those are the types of things that just like jar your brain and kind of like, I don't know, to see things with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the same lines in regards to learning about where you have gaps in your own knowledge. That in itself is a really great finding. So you can work to strengthen those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same. Like, I was just reviewing my slide deck from that presentation I put together, and there's like 5 core areas that seem to be the main focus, at least for me, for mentoring, which is a lot of people just want to hear like my story of how I got to where I am. Job hunting, interviewing, career advice, and still the biggest is portfolio and to smaller amount resume reviews. But like within all those categories, I find, besides my story, which I know my story, all the other stuff, I found gaps of where I need to actually like talk to a mentor or someone else sometimes to figure out how to best answer questions my mentees are asking.
I'll add like a small thing. I haven't done probably not a lot of mentorship, but I did have an experience with somebody more junior, and it made me have empathy for my manager and also kind of look at my past self in a different light of just like, oh, I did this before. So that's another thing. Okay, so we have a couple more questions from people. Thanks for sending them. Alina asked, what are some ways you establish time boundaries with folks you mentor? For example, prep job interviews, prep during job interviews, and those can be time intensive.
I mean, on ADP list, you time box, like by default, they're half-an-hour sessions. I of late have started doing less sessions a week. I only do one now, but I do 45-minute sessions, which I find that 15 minutes is a huge difference in what you're able to accomplish. But yeah, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things, I am always have this sort of ambitious nature. And so when I started, I was doing 3 sessions on Friday back to back at 3 from like 2:30 to 4. And I felt this like rush and I didn't feel like I was very connected. So really just focusing and doing more time, but less a week has really personally helped me be able to give that focus and have that time, because 45 minutes is typically the same amount of time as a longer interview session. So it gives you the time to do a interview session, to do a condensed design challenge, and it kind of just focuses everything up.
Awesome. Okay, well, we have another question from Topher. Do you have any strategies to be less introverted? It's a struggle sometimes when coming from an entirely different field and feeling like the new kid on the block.
Wine.
That's true.
No, seriously, that was a terrible joke. Don't do that.
I mean, I feel these events kind of, I mean, we'll have the post networking session right now and in like a couple of minutes. So feel free to, join us and get to the whole, well, most of the board is here. We're happy to talk to you. I think you can reach us through LinkedIn and stuff like that. And always, we're always happy to talk. And so that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think to give a real answer, I feel it's like riding a bike, that you just kind of got to get up and do it, and knowing the first few times or maybe like bunch of times you're going to fall, you're going to feel unsteady, but the more you do it, you're just naturally going to get more comfortable, and it's not going to feel as like awkward as it does at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I second that. It's one of those things that, like, it can be like feeling like the new kid on the block. I'm pretty extroverted, but I still have that feeling, like, especially with like starting a new job. It's like, wow, there's just so much, like everything's new, so much information, new people, new ways of doing things, just like new. So it's overwhelming. And I think that you got to remember that like each day, like each rep that you put in anything in life, just like riding a bike, just like you know, practicing design craft, meeting new people, the more you do it, like you're just building on that and building on that. And like each day you're learning a little bit more to where like, you know, it just doesn't feel all flat and new. And I think the more that you can like build that up, the better. And give yourself some grace too. Like it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel like the new kid on the block. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Like, but that doesn't last forever. You don't always feel new. You don't always feel overwhelmed about a specific thing. You will feel overwhelmed about other things that have yet to come in life, but that's just how it goes. It comes in these ebbs and waves. And I think when you're not feeling those things, that's when you start to get, you know, a little static, a little bored. And then you push yourself to do something and like shake it up all over again. So I think it's just like remembering that cycle, like, and knowing that like this feelings like that do not last forever. Like it's just human nature.
And then also for like the use case Topher said of switching from a totally different career is I had switched from a totally different career. I was in the music business before getting into UX, and like what I found super helpful was focusing on the similarities versus how different things are. Like I was doing music production, and there's definitely an overlap in doing music production to doing like design production. And so kind of seeing what you can see is kind of the same versus what's totally different and potentially like scary makes it kind of easier to find that path and get into your comfort zone.
I'm going to unmute myself to ask a question, if that's okay. Do you find that it's easier to, I guess, like as an early career UX designer, to get into UX if you're joining a field that is like the industry that you're in? So, like, I'm a speech language pathologist. So, if I went into like health tech or edu tech, like, would that be easier? Does it just, it depends? How does that go?
I think it's always good to have like some sort of relevant background. Like that doesn't hurt. It always like can give you like a leg up to show that what you're thinking about, the kind of problems or like the background are related. Like a recent example is we were looking for to hire some folks in our education area, and like people who might not have like heavy product design experience, but a lot of experience in creating like training materials and learning materials. Like maybe there's some interesting things there because they come from that field. But I think it also depends on like what you as a want. Like, do you want to stay in the field that you're in with speech and language and add and apply that like product and UX lens to it? If so, yeah, that's a great way to like bridge that gap. Or are you like just looking to do something different, like totally different? And if that's the case, that's kind of a different story. But I think that's where you'd start. Like, if it's the very beginning of your career, then it's like practicing it in the space that you want to be practicing it. You know, like doing those kind of like fake reps and exercises to get yourself acquainted and building up. Like if it's a design portfolio, then it's like creating the type of work that you want to be doing to show that, hey, if it's music, if you want to get into music and UX, then like, you know, try and solve a bunch of problems that you think Spotify needs to be solving or Apple Music, you know, like just to show the way that you think. So I think it depends on where you want to go. But if there's an opportunity to like step right into it, like, hey, you're doing speech and language, Duolingo has an opening, and like there's a way to just like jump right in, and you're willing to like give it that time to like, hey, I'm doing this because I'm trying to get my foot in the door. Like that's always a good strategy too. Like do what you can to get that foot in the door, learn from it, and maybe that is where you stay for the long haul, or maybe it's just that good stepping stone for you. I don't know.
That was such a great answer. Thank you. Very helpful.
I'm curious to hear the other folks say. I don't know. That's what I would That's what I would do.
Yeah, I would just add on to that by saying just be persistent, just keep at it. You might hit a lot of walls, or closed doors on your journey to transitioning to a new career or a new field of design. But just keep at it, be persistent, keep working on yourself. And yeah, I think that goes a long ways.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, for me, I'm a huge proponent of networking, but to what we were talking about earlier, that not that pushy kind of networking where like you're networking because you really want to work at Google and this person works at Google, for instance. But being more organic, like being open to coffee chats, and knowing that you might write 100 people and only one might write you back. That's sort of the reality. I have written so many people, and I wrote this note I thought about for like 20 minutes, and it was so wonderful, I thought, and nothing. But then I realized that part of the reason was that note was actually like 4 paragraphs long. And then I started realizing more like a UX designer thinking empathy, people are busy. Maybe I just write like a tweet's worth of notes that says, I'm really interested in being a UX designer. Would you be willing to talk to me for 15 minutes? And turns out that actually had more impact, but still maybe, 1 out of 50 people responded. But that one person was really helpful. And then they connected me to another person who connected me to another person that connected me to a job.
Yeah, that's we almost like want to put like a bullet point list of like how to be a good mentee, which I think we asked about. We kind of touched on throughout the whole thing of just directing your question, being specific. I like the tweet's worth of characters for if you reach out to somebody, that's great. And yeah, I think considering their time and it's like a two-way street, right? So that's great. I think, well, with that, we are almost at time. So I want to maybe close it off. If somebody else has another question, we maybe can fit it in, but we also have the post-networking session. So also no pressure to stay, but we'll be here, the board will be here. And yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining. I want to thank our amazing panel. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Sara. Thanks. Thanks, Brad, and Ben, and thanks to ServiceNow for sponsoring the event.